not sewage ponds, what's the technical ponds? Wastewater treats, yes. So I think it's important that we, like you said, Colin, it's a wide range of what not moderate non-complying can mean. So I think we just need to identify it, just narrow it down, because it looks like it's non-complying and probably it's just a minor issue. So they do ask those questions, and it's good to have a full answer for them.
Thank you. Notice, Chair, that Whangarei seems to achieve better results generally.
Yeah. Okay. Just one little matter, page 260 on the avian flu. Thank you. Reading between the lines, what we're getting is MPI hold the tiller on this thing, and they're not involving us. Repeating what I said before, I think MPI has kind of misread the overall situation, in that probably working well. They have these government industry agreements and that, and they're working through industry. That's fine, but there's an awful lot of people that, because it's only a matter of when, not if. When, not if. We have to really be realistic about this. There are a lot of people with cage birds. There are a lot of people with a few chooks. There are a lot of people with, we don't know what other mammals that might infest. So it's going to be a backyard issue for a lot of Kiwis. So I worry about the reputational risk to us of not being either informing MPI that, you didn't ask us, therefore we're out, you can handle it, or letting them know that we're here to help. So I think two things. One, I think we should be really writing. I mean, we did say this to the Minister last Wednesday, but I think we should write to them under your signature, Mr. Chairman, saying that avian flu, get some little bit of details from the staff saying that we're aware it's when, not if, that it'll affect a lot of small people, that it'll be a huge issue, and MPI could be caught napping there. We're not saying that's caught napping, but we're here to help you, and at the same time have a media release on that saying we're here to help. We haven't been asked yet, but we're here to help, just like that. So that way, at least if it does go up, we're covered, because the balloon will go up.
So on the back of that, Jack and Don, do we have an awareness opportunity? Because people might pick the half-head birds up, take them to the recovery centre, all that. So when do we start that conversation about leave bird alone if you see it sick or something like that? Some sort of comms plan? Because that's one way of spreading it.
And those messages are on the MPI website now, and that they are in this leadership role with other Crown agencies and industry. So the sector group, I understand, met last week, and we're concerned about the Director General's recent letter that seemed to omit regional councils and, importantly, district councils, which administer a lot of reserves where we could find pet birds. And there was a question put back to the sector group, biosecurity, the National Biosecurity Sector Group, to actually undertake to write. If, in addition, we are to write through you, Mr. Chair, write to the Minister, I would share a word of caution about how far are we committed into saying when we say we can help. Will we recover birds? Would we go out on a survey? Will we assist communities? Is this a call-in centre, etc., etc.? What we have said is that we would help distribute communications and be available to assist with coordination in the region when it comes to getting out publicity and so on. So our staff have been working with an appointed DOC ranger who has the responsibility of coordinating the department's efforts in the region, because a lot of threatened species might be at stake. But beyond distributing comms and being part of those groups, as yet we have not committed to anything further. Would it be the desire of council that we do, or should we hold that message, hold that line?
I suppose if we go too early, we might lose the power of the message. We go too late, we wait for it to turn up, and then we action. But, like going through the media, maybe the local advocate, which then spreads it to the small papers that people read just to show what we're about, what the steps should be. Like, how does he keep refreshing that? Like, if you let it go too early, you think, shit, okay, it's Christmas time, I need to refresh it again. So I'm not an expert at it, but definitely I think, like us, we've got an expert in the room, some sort of start to say, hey, we're here to help, but you know, these are the steps. If you see a sick bird, leave it. You know, little simple messages that could start coming out, maybe a lead story in the local paper of some sort that is recorded through the internet. I don't know. What would you thought?
Yeah, I guess I'm conscious of our position on it in terms of vis-a-vis MPI, going ahead of their own response. Yeah, and I take your point as well, that that's you go too early, and it's like my sense, I probably have to have more of a conversation with Dawn about it, I think, but my sense is maybe it's too early at this stage to push it out, but I think I'd rather, yeah, if we can unpack it a bit more, Dawn.
I would have to say, through you, Mr. Chair, that in terms of threatened species, the Department of Conservation really does have a lead responsibility here. Threatened seabirds, kiwi, these birds that you'll find washed up on the beaches, they are all, most of those will be threatened species, and part of the department's responsibility under that act. So it is difficult for us to put out media which would not really undermine, but you know, have the public inquire here when they have those threatened species. So we'd have to think pretty carefully about.
That's often the case, right?
Yeah.
That we don't, you know, take ownership of an issue that is not ours to lead on. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we have Amy and then Peter Lucas.
Yeah, I think so. Understanding that need to have good, healthy boundaries around who's responsible for what. I think what we really need is clarity, because I'm just imagining over Christmas holidays, all of a sudden all the community Facebook groups blowing up because people are finding dead birds and they're picking them up and taking them home, trying to bring them into Robert Webb. So I think I'd really like to see us at least go through a process of clarifying roles and responsibilities, and probably just like the 4 key things we need people to know. Don't touch them, you know, risk to humans. What's the risk to dogs? People are going to be really concerned about their dogs coming across dead birds, especially on the coast. Yeah, and who to call, and if it's nobody, let's be clear about that. I just think the worst thing we can do is let a whole lot of dead birds start to turn up and nobody knows what to do about it, including us as councillors. We're a bit like, oh, it's MPI, but we don't have clarity. So I think the best thing we can do is provide clarity, and it might be that the response is nothing from us, but we're clear about that, and we give people the information they need to feel well protected. Because once we've put that out there, I mean, even if we put it out a bit early, once people are freaking out, that, you know, that gets recirculated when it's needed. So it's already there, and you can say, look, this is the web page you can go to which sets it all out. I think we can help ourselves and help MPI, let's be honest. In Northland, we have a role to ensure that our community gets the information that they need in a form that they need, and sometimes we have to do that as the council. So understand that we're not going to become the people who go out and pick up every bird or nurse them back to the good health, but I think there's a really important role for us to provide leadership just around clarity, roles and responsibilities, and like the 3 things we want people to do when they come across a sick bird. I want to know that for myself, and I know that my community will want to know that. So I'm really keen on us clarifying this once again the next couple of weeks, so that before we go away for Christmas.
They'll ring the front desk first, right?
Yeah.
So they need to be trained on their response.
Yeah.
Does it ring doc?
Yeah.
You know what it is, because they'll get the phone calls.
Yeah. And sometimes what people think is the right thing to do is completely the wrong thing to do. So if we don't help them, we can make the problem worse. So really appreciate if you can give us some guidance, and then we can, through all of our networks, you know, most of us contribute to small community newsletters and things like that. It means that we can really help push that information out so it's at people's fingertips. Thank you.
Okay. Peter Lucas and then Jack.
Yeah, I'm just trying to seek clarification from you, Chair, around why we would have what you described and I interpreted as quite a comprehensive strategic communications approach to this, and whether it's not something that we perhaps don't have jurisdiction over and is something that we would perhaps seek to strategically influence those that do have jurisdiction to take the lead on. And I only mentioned that because from what I understood from what you were saying, you were suggesting newspaper articles, you were suggesting what could end up being a call to action, and I'm not sure what that call to action would be, or what our jurisdiction would be to call to action, how that level of engagement would impact with the public, and it could actually mislead them. They might think that we have responsibility, where what might be better is directing the traffic. And if we were to think about how we direct traffic, that would be perhaps a more strategic conversation with those that have jurisdiction about, for example, native birds that are impacted by this. I just wanted to seek some clarification from you, because are you suggesting that we have a communication strategy on this?
No, I wasn't suggesting, I was discussing whether we need one. I've got Kathy in the room and just with Don, and sounds like Doc is, but we will be contacted, and what's our strategy? And I was just discussing, do we need to have a strategy that starts promoting it? And it doesn't sound like we need to, because it's not our lead, it's Doc and, what I understand, MPI. So that's what I was just really clarifying in my own discussion.
I just wanted to understand where we'd landed with that. Kia ora.
Yes, we've landed at this. Kathy, would you like to discuss?
I was just going to say, I think it's kind of along the lines of what Amy is suggesting. It's having our agreed approach so that, yes, we can have those key messages. They might not be ours to own and to push out, but to have the back pocket messages and be able to direct as required, rather than putting it necessarily in.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I can continue. I think even if to begin with, those are just shared with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that we can then, you know, and it might be very clear that all we do is guide people to MPI's websites and stuff. But I just think there's in the absence of information, people will do their own thing. And I think there's a risk here that what people's instincts will be not what we would advise them to do, or MPI would be advising them to do. So just, it is tricky, it's pretty messy, but at the end of the day, I just think about the people out there, what do they need? And they just need clarity. So
the coastal people probably have first, like yourselves.
Yeah, well, it sounds like West Coast is going to be
on the West Coast. So
I'm being engaged from the coast, just to let you know.
All right, Jack.
Yeah, thank you. I think we've landed where we need to be. Look, I never said at any stage that we had any responsibility, by the way. All I'm saying is the public needs to know where the responsibility lies, because I'm worried about the reputational risk. But thank you, Amy, for articulating it better than I could. But we need to make sure that we don't have any reputational risk by association. But the other thing about my comment about here to help is based on the basis on which the first avian flu scare came around, where MPI went to regional councils and said, we have different tiers of approaches. Can you apportion staff? What's your hourly rate? How many vehicles? How many computers? Blah, blah, blah. And we'll hire you to do that work. We're not asking, I'm not suggesting that we volunteer to pull the irons out of the fire. What I'm saying is it's not a bad idea to volunteer, to say we're here to help in a contract basis. But I think we also need to be guided by Don's comment that there's going to be a joint regional council position on that, I believe you were saying. So let's be guided by that. When are we likely to get that?
Well, it was interesting at the last meeting, because although they discussed it, I'm not clear about what the final outcome was of that. I thought that, and I've asked Mickey to follow up, I thought that there was going to be a letter written back to Stuart, setting out what the sector thought their responsibilities were. So we still have to discover what that was and really see. But at the moment, it's very muddy, very unclear.
Okay, so it might be that all we have is something on our website that says refer to MPI, but gotta make sure that our hands are clean. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion around this? Been good, robust discussion? Okay. So we have Joe and John. So all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Okay, received. Okay. I'll go to page 277, which is reporting on the long-term plan 2024 to 2034 performance measures for Q1 of the 24-25 year, item 8.3. We're just receiving the report. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Rick?
You happy to second it?
Okay, John. Okay, it's got in here that there are currently 2 of 49 measures that have been identified as not going to be achieved by the year of the end. These are discussed in further details in the tables below. So anybody would like to discuss the 2 issues that haven't hit the target?
Not particularly.
Not particularly. It doesn't look like it's out by much,
No.
90%. So
Or bus fleet electrification, there's not much we can do about that. What's the other one? Oil spill? Oil spill.
29 instead of 30. It's pretty close.
that's very good.
It is very good, thank you.
Surprised one of
And
the
we have
staff been
been
putting a
received-
private one there, Louisa.
I think you just do that to say that we're not perfect.
100%. You don't want to be perfect.
Mr. Chairman, this is a fantastic report. I'm really proud of it, proud to own it, and I think staff should be too. I'm very happy.
Any other discussion online?
Very
Okay.
good, thanks.
All in favour of receiving the report?
I-
Against? Okay, passed. Okay, so we have to working party updates.
Committee.
Number 1.
Oh, it's
I'll put what?
Oh, receive a community minute,
I'll
sorry.
move.
Okay, you'll move.
I'll have it seconded.
Okay. Joe and John, would you like to discuss anything there that you?
Yeah, from the Regional Transport Committee, yeah, we had the representative from NZ Rail, who's also the operations manager for Northland line upgrade in the Marsden Spur. He's presented a long section, it's the big drawn out long section of the plan, the Marsden Spur line. And it's a pretty big achievement what he's done. And I actually asked him for a laminated copy. I'd like to see it stretched across the wall somewhere in this council. And they've stayed on task, and where it's at now is the Minister of Transport will be coming to a view on that line, and assisted with some rough order costing, and the discussion will be with Ebner. It's a big lot of work and quite a big investment. I think it's the most important thing that most people aren't aware of.
So that what we found at that meeting, they've got virtually all the land apart from 2 little small sections that they're going to add to the line, and they're virtually just waiting on government approval to start. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're right. It's going to be a big one because the demand for capital for New Zealand infrastructure is quite huge. So where we go from there is we've made the point all the way through and submitted to the Minister of Transport variously that the 4-laning of the state highway between Whangarei and Marsden Point should be considered as a project alongside this rail spur line, because there's so many construction synergies that would potentially reduce the cost of both projects. And we've made that point quite a few times, but it does need some ownership. There is a liaison committee set up by WDC, but it's effectively addressing issues of the spur line as it would affect the administration of the Whangarei district. And John and I had mentioned that we were interested in it, but we haven't had a response back on that one.
There was a discussion about Kiwi Rail have got $300,000 available now to do something with. So there was a bit of lobbying about how we start, because they need to preload some of the area.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where that's got to, Joe. So maybe that's a conversation to at least show that they're going to start. They got the money sitting there, and the concern will be that it'll get directed off to somewhere else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so next time in the meeting.
Start's a good thing to do.
Yeah, it starts always a good look. So there was $300,000 available to start. Any other?
Maybe I'll just speak briefly to the Joint Climate Change Adaptation Committee. If it's all right.
Yeah.
So we had a really short meeting and moved into a workshop, which was a really useful and productive session. I just wanted to bring to attention of this council that we had some new appointments in the iwi positions on that joint committee, and Nise Porter and Deloraine Armstrong were both appointed, one for Far North and for Whangarei District Council. And I just think that's really great, because we're starting to see those synergies of people's involvement across council, different kaupapa, and so I think that's really strong for us to have those connections with the iwi representatives that we're working with. And in terms of the workshop, we were looking really at how to basically strategically prepare that committee to be set up well for the coming term. It's not a powerful committee, but it's an important one in terms of the work that it addresses. And so, yeah, it was quite good to go back to basically blank page and talk about what are the key opportunities, what are the challenges, and how could we do what we are trying to do a bit better. And there's a real wide range of opinions in that room, and so it was good for everyone to speak up and be heard. And interestingly, we seem to struggle with how we describe the impacts or effects of climate change, but the actual issues we agree on. So I think it was a good chance to elevate the conversation a bit to the key things we're actually concerned about, and then maybe work back from there. So I came out of there quite optimistic that we can maybe set the terms of reference slightly differently, get that committee functioning in a way that it's a little bit more useful in terms of taking the region forward for climate change. So anyway, it was good start, and more work to be done before the end of this term. So hopefully next term it can really hit the ground running. That's my hope.
Is there any sort of milestones that you're targeting for, like in the new year term?
In the new term?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't really clear yet, was it, Louisa? We're still in the process. So that was the first session, and I think where we got to was that staff will bring back a second session where we turn it more into like what it would functionally look like. So this was more of an open discussion with lots of different minds in the room, and basically an acknowledgement that committee is really an advocacy committee back to the individual councils where all the decisions are made. So it's really about us coming together. At a staff level, it works really well that across council sharing of knowledge, it makes our staff work really efficiently, and they support each other, and it means we get good consistency as a region. But from a governance perspective, it's not quite hitting the mark. So just trying to really figure out what that might look like in the new term. Obviously, it's also quite connected to politics, right? So I guess we can set it up as best possible, but you have to wait for the elections to happen and then see what the appetite is of whoever's elected and how that's going to function. So interesting challenge, Louisa?
Thanks, Amy. Other discussions? Okay. So we got Joe and John who moved it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Okay. Passed. Okay. Working party updates, 9.2, page 297.
I'll move that one.
Okay, Rick.
I'm not first up, but I'm third.
I'll second it then.
I was going to say, Jack, you're on there.
I'm in there.
I'm not first up to discuss, so I got a bit to say, but.
Okay, well, it hasn't stopped you before. Away you go.
Cool. Okay, well, I'll start off with public transport. So I think we mentioned the national ticketing system coming out before, so I don't think we need to go over that. And the T2 lanes, extra money for that. We've discussed that before, but I do want to do a big applaud, I guess, to Natalia for she's been very active in the community for the survey on the bus links, and she's done a fantastic job. She attended a number of ratepayer meetings, more than me, in fact, and she's also been to markets. She's everywhere. So if people don't know, there's a move to get more people on the bus. They can't blame regional council, the staff, or the councillors, because she's been out there doing a fantastic job. And I was on the radio this morning for the holiday bus, and there's a survey coming out for that one. So people will have their chance to have their say there, and it was well used last year, and I'm sure we're going to get more people on the bus this year. So it's fantastic. It's good to see, and the radio was very supportive of keeping. She mentioned twice about keeping sandy feet off the bus. So she's very keen on looking after the buses and very keen on people using them. So let's get out there and support the survey. So please pass that on. We've done a fantastic job.
And on behalf of all the ratepayers, Rick said the buses are free.
It is.
Don't-
Not for me.
Okay, Jack.
Urban rivers, I'd like to thank staff for being overall the issues really well. The interesting thing brought up about go to confirm what's insured and what it covers, or partial or full failure. It's a very interesting matter. So I got nothing else to add on that. I think we seem to be over the issues. Okay, the staff seem to be well ahead of everything we asked them, and we want to get a bit of publicity around that Urban Arbor project, which was a real success, not only in terms of what was achieved, but it also looks good. So there'll be something up on the website about that at some stage. Sorry, I haven't had a look yet, but hopefully there will be.
All right, we've had plenty of discussion around biosecurity, biodiversity, so we don't need to go over that again.
Nothing there. No, just the wetland mapping update. Look, that's still an issue around cultural sensitivity, but also privacy. So it's not something we can say we've actually settled. It's always going to be an issue that we have to keep addressing. So, yeah, so just make councillors aware that there's a lot of sensitivities around wetland mapping, and some people may not wish their wetland to be mapped on any public space. So that's just something we have to manage. Thanks.
Any discussion on that, Ruben? I know that you've said you completed the wetland mapping in Northern, is that correct?
Yeah, so we already have wetland maps on our public website. They're just not very accurate. So the exercise that we undertook provides more accurate representation. But just as a reminder, the direction that we're taking is to work alongside MTAG to enable a better understanding as to how we can manage the wetland effectively as a database and continually update it in a way that's consistent with what their expectations are, bearing in mind a lot of the wetland areas are on whenua Māori. So we're cognizant of that. We've taken direction from TTMAC around how to address that, and it's the next step that we've taken is provide the maps to MTAG so that they can build an understanding as to how the layer will actually work in practice. And we'll be working with them over the next couple of months to come up with some next steps around that.
Right, just an information sharing. How do we, I know we had a letter from the Kings and the Far North. How do we go about if we've got a wetland that's been mapped? How do we dispute it? What are the steps that we go through of council to resolve the issues?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I guess the first step is just reiterating that these are not regulatory layers. There are no rules attached to these. They're information only, and it's a management tool. So if someone is concerned about a wetland on our mapping system that identifies a site that they don't believe is a wetland, we can look into it but it sort of needs to be prioritised against all the rest of our work as well. Take home about this tool is that it's a database, and it's in that regard it's continually updated. So it's not like we do the wetland mapping and then we walk away. We do the wetland mapping and then we spend the next 10 years validating it. And so through that validation process, you might get people ringing up, it might be staff going out in the field. We'll have a process of continually updating it to improve accuracy. So when we do get customers who ring up and say, I'm not comfortable with the mapping that you provided, the feedback that we'll be providing is we have a process to update the maps, but it might not be straight away. But also reiterating the fact that these are not tied to any rules whatsoever.
Okay, so you have an area that the drainage has been working poorly on, and it's rushes and it looks like a wetland. You clean the drainage out and that wetland, disappears over 2 or 3 years. Is there any issue about potential problems that you've destroyed a wetland in that situation?
I'll hand it over to Colin.
I'm just saying this is just, I'm thinking practically.
So, yeah, that's a good question, Chair. Ultimately, we do have some rules that can be utilised for various drainage purposes, but there's also requirements under the NS Freshwater. There's quite strict requirements about what works that can be done near wetlands, and part of that is if you do change the hydrology of a wetland, then that's not good, and that's a potential breach of a regulation of law. So that's where it becomes very challenging dealing with some of these wetland issues. We end up having to do quite a bit of cost just to confirm whether or not a wetland is a wetland, and then there's often a debate whether a wetland is a natural wetland or not as well. So it is a very challenging area.
Okay, can we, knowing what both of us know, is there any way that we could come up with a system that might make it better? Like is there's a 5-step plan in your head to think that, I've come along with a digger and I've cleaned these drains out. Do I have to call the NRC? How is it? Because most of the farmers wouldn't have a clue that this is going on.
So 5-step plan, I don't have a 5-step plan. I'd say fundamentally, if in doubt, call us.
Okay, how do we promote that? Because I would say that the farming community probably wouldn't be aware of issues like that, but the last thing we need is somebody turning up, like one of your representatives, saying, hey, there was a wetland here 3 years ago, you've destroyed it, doing this. How do we get around that sort of issue? I'm just trying to stop something that's going to come to us.
Often I may want to also have Kathy might want to intervene as well, but I think there's educational material we can put on our websites. We do, have with our dairy farmers, we've got our dairy farming newsletter, a vehicle and avenue to the issue with the dairy farmers. Ruben's got his working group with private industry. There are vehicles and avenues to put more front of mind on people who might want to develop their land about the risks or potential issue with lands.
I can, Chair. I'll just add to what Colin is pointing out. As part of our rollout of freshwater farm plans, like this would be a key talking point with farmers, and what they would be doing is identifying sensitive areas like this through the farm plan system. It's unfortunate that the whole system has gone on hold, but risks like this and shifting people's mindset is one of the key benefits of a farm plan. So I think in addition to all those points that Colin raised, hopefully once the regulations have come to light, we'll have a clearer pathway for supporting landowners to understand these problems, these challenges.
Okay, is there any way through Kathy, like with Beef and Lamb, Dairy NZ, they have their, I get a Beef and Lamb website email every week, probably John does too. Dairy NZ put out one probably weekly. So, these sort of things, is there any way of communication? Because I just think it could be better, you know, because summer's coming up, right? This is the time when people don't do all this sort of work, and then we don't want enforcement issues if we don't need to. If we can just have an awareness program through those connections, RNZ and the farming.
Yeah, I think if we can clarify what the key messages that we need to get across and to who, then we can check what are the best channels to get that, and whether that is something on the website or whether it's looking into other sources that are going to that audience.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, communication, you know, is the key, because, you know, I get, you know, as farmers, we'd get a phone call all the time. As soon as there's an issue with the NRC, they'll ring me or they'll ring John or Joe to say, hey, we've got your staff here giving us a hard time. We don't want that. You know, how do we get ahead of that sort of?
And if there are frequently asked questions, then that kind of thing we can get on there.
Okay.
Bruce. Thanks, Chair. I think we'll just review what we've currently done, what we're currently doing, what we've done in the past, and then look at what we need to do moving forward. So we'll commit to doing that.
Okay, Peter Lucas, you got your hand up?
In terms of your description of people cold calling you when they are having an issue, or as you describe, getting a hard time by our staff, how do we actually log that content, you know, and how do we log that issue? How do we keep a record of those issues? Because if they're significant enough for you to raise in a council meeting, they must be important.
Yeah, thanks, Peter Lucas. So typically passed down to staff, and then they're registered in our IRIS database for follow-up and assigned to staff for follow-up. So that's the process for that.
So normally
do we sort of get an idea? If I could just finish, Mr. Chair. Do we get a sort of idea of the general areas that that people are finding difficult to understand, or that there are misunderstandings about? Is there a general sort of area or there categories that, like, if councillors are being contacted about it, is there a general sort of way that we sort of know what the themes are?
Through the chair, Councillor Lucas, yes, a lot of these sort of inquiries that councillors receive from constituents regarding potential non-compliances and enforcement action do come my way, and we do record them all. They can be quite variable. But you know, things like drainage and particularly between neighbours is often a theme that comes up. We get a fairly good steer in terms of just the complaints or reports we receive on the environmental hotline. Again, another big issue in Northland is backyard burning, and that's often between, again, neighbours will get upset. So we've got a fairly good understanding of the issues that come up, and we do try to work through the problems and do some proactive media stuff as well. But yeah, it can be very variable.
Okay, the only reason I ask is because if we perhaps could, you know, maybe help with maybe like material, if there is a general sort of misunderstanding around like what are, like, you know, things that people are allowed to do and things that people aren't allowed to do. I'm just wondering if there might be like a misunderstanding in general around what some of those things are. But you also raise inter-property sort of issues as well, which I guess is something more relationship driven between properties, I'd imagine.
Okay, Joe?
Yeah, look, it's a significant issue arises from NRC's policies about obstructing clearance of existing drains that have come host to indigenous wetland species. And you've got cases in the far north, there's 5 drainage districts, and for quite a few years, Far North District Council has not attended to them, maintaining them, and yet they're rated for those works, and now they're been colonised by some of them by indigenous wetland species. And then I think this could be a bit to do with the king issue. Then you get an NRC field staff come along, so they don't touch. And it's that needs sort of to be backed off a bit, I think, and it affects road lines, forestry blocks, for instance. People plant trees and do their silviculture and then let them go to sleep, and you get a blockage of a culvert somewhere, and there's wetland species hosted in the drains, and then they're told not to clean them. So we've got we need our rules to be a bit more, I think.
Through the chair, just on that point, we do have rules that permit activities in terms of drain clearance and so forth. That you say you don't need to obtain a consent to do it.
Good.
But again, it's making sure that people comply with the conditions of those permitted activity rules. Often that's where there might be some challenges.
Okay.
But on the whole, we do a pretty good job for the amount of work that's been done. The hotline isn't that overloaded. As councillors, I would say probably once a month I might get an email from a person. You'd be the same, Joe, in the community. So now, Joe, you're one of the working party groups, your Kaiau River. Would you like to bring that up before we accept it?
Yeah, it's difficult because we've got some funding available in Kaiau. It's in excess of $1 million, and the staff have a proposal to reroute the main Kaiau River. By doing that, making it slightly more direct, it should give 50 mils drop of flood height, which may help the town. And there's discussion about Manu Road, which people want route security over, and the effect of the Manu Road is a barrier going back to flood. So it's quite a complex discussion. And behind this again is the rivers, active rivers like that, carry quite a lot of sediment and gravel load, and these go down into the CMA area and they become difficult to address there. So it's various things. The actual section of river that would be diverted, it's got very stable banks, and when you do a cut, it's anticipated that as things adjust, there will be quite a lot of erosion and quite a sediment load which goes downstream. The Kaiau Bridge has been built, it's a great achievement, and it's quite long. It's probably at least a third longer than the previous one, but down below it, the river's restricted, so it's not getting, we don't get full advantage of that, and that section of river is where the deposition zone is. And previously, an agreement was reached with the District Council, Regional Council and Park Conservation, and they drew the CMA line right up the bridge, and that really should be about a K down for naval maintenance. So with all that, it's a complex thing to deal with, and we want to use this funding. So there's been modelling done, and Councillor Robinson is going to have the pleasure of chairing the next meeting discussing all this. I haven't seen the agenda and how it's pulled together, but very interested in how it does. So those issues sitting there. Naturally, there's some landowner resistance. Not naturally, actually. There is some landowner resistance in one area. That's this recut of the river between the Manu Road and sort of down. But then there's landowner support or pulling back stock banks into their property to help section of the river below the new State Highway Bridge. Interestingly, they're both Hayes families involved. I think that's pretty much it.
So Joe, you got $1 million in the tin. Is river still targeted rated?
Yes, it is, but this funding is in addition to that targeted rate income. How much is it? Louise, is 1.1 billion or something, is it?
Yeah, it's around that. Top of my head, it's part of one of our projects around the.
Yeah.
So part of it is centrally government funded, and some is time.
Yeah. So you know, good information helps good decision making, and the community's got to work their way through it. Hopefully they will, but I would say we really need to not forget about the gravel migration and sedimentation downstream, because it's been an issue, right? Got oyster farms down the CMA that, because the surface area of all the structures just grab hold of sediment, and you know, it's a dumping ground for sediment. So it's quite pretty complex there, a lot of passion.
Okay, we just got Marty with his hand up. You still there, Marty?
Yeah, still here, and just thanking Joe for standing in for me at that meeting. There is a workshop, kaiwa workshop planned for 16th of December.
Okay. All right. No other discussion? Oh, yes. Amy?
I just want to loop back around on the wetland discussion, because I think it's just really important that we, you know, when we're talking about our flood management, you know, and management of, you know, sediment and stuff that's getting dragged out into our coastal environment, that we just remember the fundamental importance of wetlands in our landscape. And totally hearing that there's a real challenge there for us as a region to go through the process of understanding what the future of our land might look like when we have more of a mosaic, but it's actually what's needed. And so I guess going back to Ruben's point, like that farm planning process where we can have those discussions, that's so essential, because, you know, we've had 90% of our wetlands drained, and a lot of the issues that we're dealing with in terms of flood management and water quality are, you know, there's a direct relationship there. And so it's going to be a long journey, but what we need to do as a region is figure out how we can reinstate wetlands and live with them, you know, and still have the land be productive, but have wetlands that are all through the landscape. They'll retain our stormwater, you know, like when, you know, our flood issues, if we can keep more water in the ground, everybody's happy, because that will then be available during droughts. They're going to hold sediment, they're going to hold nutrients, and they're also really good carbon sinks, as well as all their biodiversity and intrinsic value. So I guess just understand the complexity that we're trying to navigate as we help our communities understand this, but just bringing back that importance of the conversation we need to have on farm all across the north, and I guess, yeah, wherever possible, remind the government that those tools, they're actually what we need, and it's about supporting landowners. It's not about making their lives harder. Long term, it makes their land more productive and their landscape more healthy. So I think, yeah, I'm appreciative of the mapping, and I think it gives us a really good start point for a whole lot of conversations that we need to have, and there's a real opportunity for us to listen and learn and get somewhere really excellent for our land and also for our water. So yeah.
I think it's just for me, it's communication of that mapping's been done, and please check your farm and start having that discussion now.
Yep.
Because I think we've got a land management team, as I would say, not sitting on their bum doing nothing, but shit, this is a good opportunity to get them out and farm and say, we can either create better wetlands with this, and there's some funds available, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, that's a discussion.
Just going on from Amy's point, I think with these wetlands, they're going to be a bit like our river with the planting of the willows that now, 50 years later, probably wasn't best practice. So with wetlands, I think we need to actually think a bit further down the track, as they probably need maintaining in the future. We should allow for that. And what is good practice to maintain a wetland? We know the practice has been done now with sewage schemes, and maybe we should be thinking about that when we actually start replacing or building some of these wetlands, so we actually can maintain them in the future. Very hard to do it without build them, taking that into account. Thank you.
Okay, good discussion, and we should come to your climate change. All right, now the discussion. All right,
Great.
so we've got Rick and Jack have first and second. So all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Okay. Okay, so we're just going to move into business.
I'll move that.
Okay, sure, okay.
Nothing there.